The Environmental Defense Fund is actually an international organization, and so we do a lot of work related to the environment and climate. But I work specifically in our Climate Resilient Water Systems program, where we have been working across the arid West on proactive water supply management, particularly groundwater. I focus our work here on Texas, which is my native state, and my background is on law and policy, and so it's been really exciting to be able to do this work here in Texas.
What do we know about groundwater in Texas and how rapidly we are seeing it decline?
Yeah, so you did a really great job covering some of the basic points earlier, and I think right now what we're facing is just really a prolific drought. It's spreading rapidly. 86% of the state is now in drought, which is just compared to 3 months ago, it was only 28%. And as you mentioned, Central Texas has really been bearing the brunt of that with being an exceptional drought for many, many months now. And unfortunately, drought is expected to remain over the next 3 months. And so we're going to need a lot of rain statewide to come out of it. What's important, though, that I'd love for your listeners to kind of take away with is that drought, it's more than just about a lack of precipitation. It also precipitates unsustainable extraction of what is a very limited resource, and which is also an incredibly important resource to Texas because groundwater provides about 60% of Texas's total water use, and about 80% of that is used by the agricultural sector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. What do we know, and what can you explain about the differences in the different parts of the state and the different aquifers from which they draw? Because the scenarios are quite different, aren't they? Obviously, out here where we have the Ogallala, there's very little recharge. What recharge we do get takes a long time. You go down around San Antonio, though, as I understand it, you talk about the Edwards Aquifer, and the drought is so critical because they can get pretty rapid recharge, as I understand it, in those rock formations of that part of the state. But obviously, if it's not raining, it ain't happening.
That's true, yeah. I mean, we live in a very big state, and so we are blessed to have a variety of different aquifers, and those aquifers recharge differently. They're composed of different types of rocks and sand. And I think that's one of the reasons why the way that we are managing groundwater through local groundwater conservation districts really is the best route, because the types of uses, the hydrogeology, the concerns that landowners who are using that water have all vary across the state. The state has done a good job in supporting local management of groundwater, but we need to do more. Again, I think local management is the right framework, but the state can support that local management through increased science. The state provides groundwater districts with regional models, but those models need to be refined, they need to be improved, and most importantly, they need to be updated with more and more data. And in the High Plains, there are a few older groundwater districts with a lot of resources. Y'all are lucky to have that. But in a lot of other parts of Texas, groundwater conservation districts are much smaller and really just don't have a lot of tools or funding to do their jobs effectively. And so the state can support those efforts through the development of additional science and data. And one area I think that we really need to be looking at is providing grant programs to groundwater districts to do more data and science. And they're the ones that are in control of it and can develop that themselves. But the state can provide funding for that.
Mm-hmm. Is there talk about that happening?
That is something that a lot of groups have been talking about. I think just with how bad the drought has been, and with Texas's projected population growth, which is projected to increase by more than 70% over the next 50 years, I think there's a lot of attention on how we can improve our management of groundwater, and investment in data and science is a huge part of that.
What is the picture like downstate where you live and work more? Up here in the Panhandle, obviously, we don't have the largest of the cities, obviously. A lot of rural country out here, a lot of farming, a lot of ranching. There's a lot of water down there, and these landowners are very concerned about it. I know they are. I talked to them. We cover this story extensively. I know they're very concerned about the future of that water supply. There's a lot of work within the groundwater districts going on and learning more about how to conserve, how to be better stewards. They're also very serious in defending their own personal water rights, of course, as property owners as well. And they're not going to be opening the door for somebody to come in and take it either. But we ought to all be on this page of trying to conserve where possible. What does life look like in some of the big cities, the Austins, the San Antonios, in a drought like this? Are you seeing massive water restrictions and growing problems like that already?
We are seeing water restrictions, and I just want to say the agricultural sector is always at the forefront of water conservation initiatives. But Texas is becoming more urban, and the Water Development Board projects that municipal supply will outpace agricultural use in the future. So it's really important that municipal water use, that conservation is at the forefront. We have seen a lot of drought restrictions kicking into place. Those vary. It's kind of piecemeal depending on where you live and where that specific water source is coming from. It's pretty grim here. I mean, we're seeing landowners' wells going dry across the hill country. We're seeing springs declining at unprecedented rates. And it is hard because you can't just simply cut someone's drinking water off if you're a utility. And so it presents a difficult challenge for groundwater districts who are kind of on the fringe of cities that are regulating groundwater production, particularly along the I-35 corridor, where you have rural communities using groundwater and growing urban centers as well. And really the need to kind of cut back some of that pumping is difficult.